Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Suburban Rifleman. As I am sure most of you are already very well aware, recently, over the last month or two, Crazy Uncle Joe has been doing quite a bit of saber rattling, as have some of the more radical members of our legislature. They've been threatening people, and on top of that, they've been threatening a whole bunch of new gun legislation. I think a renewal of the old-fashioned assault weapons ban has already passed the House. I think it needs to be confirmed in the Senate, and which I don't think it has a chance of doing. But they've been proposing a bunch of other common sense gun laws, which most of which have no sense in them whatsoever. I think there's a 20% tax on firearms manufacture. There's a proposed 1,000% tax on new gun sales. All kinds of crazy stuff like that. The credit card companies are threatening to keep a database on who buys guns and report it to the authorities. Which, you know, they're monitoring things that are not even legal and illegal, and they're, you know, constitutionally guaranteed your right to buy a firearm. So anyway, in the face of all of this, I was not really planning on building any more AR-15s. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, well, 5 or 10 years ago, I got into like this Zen minimalist mentality, and I got rid of a bunch of stuff, and I had gotten down to one AR-15 lower and a couple of uppers that I could swap back and forth just to sort of minimalize. But in light of all of this, proposed legislation and threats that have been leveled at our community, I got the idea maybe it's not a bad idea to buy a couple of strip lowers, just so if I should happen to want to do a build in the future, I just order some parts off the internet. I've already got the gun, the serialized part of the gun ready to go. If I want to build another carbine or rifle or maybe a pistol, maybe paper one as an SBR, although that would kind of defeat the purpose of having them before the government starts being well, they're already too intrusive. Anyway, so all of this sort of hoopla that's been going on just so happened to coincide with Labor Day. And of course, many of the gun manufacturers have Labor Day sales. And I did end up buying 2 lower receivers from Palmetto State Armory. So I've got 2 lowers here in case I want to build something. Of course, then I got sucked into the Labor Day sales, and I bought a whole bunch of other stuff. I actually have, I think, just about enough to build a complete carbine at the moment. And I have another lower, and I have a selection of other parts. I'm probably pretty close to being able to build 2 complete guns. So I ended up buying them from Palmetto State Armory. They had some good sales over Labor Day. Actually, I don't think these were on sale, but they were free shipping, I think, for Labor Day weekend. And anyway, I've had good luck with Palmetto stuff in the past. I've never bought one of their lowers before. And I like Palmetto. I know some people say, if you're going to buy an AR, buy something high end. Don't mess around with PSA. But a lot of people have had a lot of good luck with PSA. And on top of that, PSA is maybe the biggest seller of AR-15s and parts today. They're really kind of at the top of their game. And so I wanted to get a couple of lowers. One thing I'm not really thrilled about with PSA is the branding on their lowers. I don't have a problem with Palmetto State Armory's logo. As a matter of fact, they sent me a sticker. So here's PSA's logo. You've got crossed cannons and cannonballs and Palmetto State Armory. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with this logo. As a matter of fact, I may very well put it on the back of my truck, but I didn't really want this emblazoned on the side of the magwell on my lowers. And there are a bunch of other options. Palmetto makes all kinds of lowers, as do many other manufacturers like Spikes. I think you can get completely almost sterile with just a serial number. you can, those were not on sale. As a matter of fact, I don't even think they were in stock over Labor Day weekend. I think Palmetto also has the normal selection of Punisher skulls and snowflakes and Patriot boners and who knows what else that you can get on the side of your AR. But I didn't want any of that stuff. And I found that they sold lowers that are U.S. property marked. I know that's kind of goofy also. Some people really don't like that, but I guess kind of a kid at heart, and I've never really lost my attraction for the sort of official use only wording on stuff. So I think they sell M16A1 labeled lowers and M16A2 labeled lowers, and I know they sell M4 and M4A1s, and that's what I bought. One of these is marked M4 and the other one is marked M4A1. So I just wanted to do a short video. I know we're already at like 6 minutes here. I just want to go on the tabletop and take a look at these two lowers. I wasn't able to find, and there may be videos out there showing this, but I wasn't able to find a video that gave you a really good look at the roll marks on these M4 and M4A1 U.S. government property marked lowers to give you a real feel for what they are or how they're marked. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to do that. I'm not going to build something. YouTube really doesn't like that. And I'm not going to go into all the other stuff I bought. Most of you probably have a pretty good, if you haven't already built your AR, or maybe you've built several ARs, you probably have a pretty good notion of what your next build is going to be. You don't care. There's a grasshopper. I don't know if my phone is shaking, but there's a grasshopper sitting on top of my phone. So if there's a little jiggling, that's what it is. You probably already have a pretty good idea of what your next build is going to be. So I'm not going to go into all that other stuff. I just want to take a look at these lowers. So without any further ado, let's move over to the tabletop and take a look at these Palmetto State Armory M4 marked lowers. All right, everyone. So here's our two Palmetto lower receivers. We're mostly here to look. I'm going to try to keep this short. We're mostly here to look at the markings because that's what I couldn't find much about. I can't tell you much else about these receivers because they're both absolutely brand new. But they both look perfect. The finish is perfect. The machining is perfect. And that's really not a surprise. At this point, the CNC programming for these things is so carved in stone. It would be very difficult to imagine getting a part that isn't perfect. Unless the person who set up the machine is kind of screwed up when they were setting the tools, or unless maybe the CNC operator made a mistake in putting the parts in a fixture, which I've run CNC machines a lot. I know how it goes, especially once you get into a rhythm. I find that very hard to believe. Pretty much any receiver you get from a reputable manufacturer is going to be functionally, dimensionally identical to anything else. You can convince me that there's a huge difference in the quality of barrels from different manufacturers. You could convince me that there's a big difference in some internal parts that may be dimensionally different types of triggers, things like that. But really, and billet uppers and lowers, billet receiver parts, there may be some variation there. But with these type of machined forged parts, I find it very hard to believe that there's a significant difference between this and pretty much anything else. You can buy a receiver from Colt or Wyndham Weaponry or Spikes Tactical or I don't care, CMMG, Knights Armament, even Palmetto, or God forbid Anderson. They're not going to be any different, really. I've used Anderson parts, which a lot of people are down on. These are the first receivers I've bought from Palmetto, but they're all going to be pretty much the same. And these do look pretty much identical. We're mostly here to look at these markings. And yes, I did cover up my serial numbers. And yes, I'm one of the guys that makes fun of people who cover up their serial numbers. I'm generally not that guy. When I do videos on the other channel about cars or motorcycles, I don't blur out my license plate number. I generally think that that's unnecessary. But in the political climate, which I already talked a little bit about, that we're living in today, I just don't see a good reason to advertise the serial numbers of my firearms all over the internet. So if this makes me look paranoid to you and you think I'm a goof for it, that's fine. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. The rest of the markings are what we're here to look at anyway. So let's start off with the M4. This one's marked property, U.S. government, M4 carbine, caliber 5.56. This is pretty close to what you'd get on an actual M4 carbine, government-issued M4 carbine. Now, of course, there's some major differences. Most of those are going to be from Colt, and they'll have the Hartford horsey on top of a globe up here over the markings. Another difference being that these are not roll marked. Every military issue rifle I've ever seen has had roll marked markings on it. These are clearly engraved, and that makes sense. It's a better process. It's easier. It's cheaper. You end up with a nicer end finish. I don't know if these were laser engraved using a CNC laser engraver. They might be CNC. They might be mechanically engraved using a little tiny end mill bit in a CNC milling machine. I don't know. They could be EDM for all I know. I don't know an awful lot about engraving, but they're definitely engraved. So they do look a little bit different than you'd get on an official carbine that came from Colt and had been roll marked, but they're pretty darn close to the markings on the real rifles or carbines. Another difference would be what it says here. An official issue rifle is going to come from Colt Defense. It's going to be marked Colt Defense, Hartford, Connecticut, and USA. This, of course, says Palmetto State Armory because that is, of course, who made this. So you can see West Columbia, South Carolina, MFG code 7XC20. This is, in fact, the cage code for Palmetto State Armory. I don't know how much stuff Palmetto has supplied to the military, probably parts and things, obviously not entire rifles. But that is an actual cage code for Palmetto State Armory. And in keeping with the fact that this one is an M4 carbine, it's marked safe, semi, and burst. And just like the U.S. government property markings, these markings are obviously purely cosmetic. This is a semi-auto only AR-15 lower. You'd have to do some major work to this to get it to fire burst. Well, actually, you wouldn't have to do a lot of work to the lower receiver. I'm not going to get into that, but it would require a bunch of different parts, and it would also require a ton of paperwork, and you wouldn't be able to sell it. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. This is a semi-auto AR-15. The burst marking is purely cosmetic. The M4A1 is pretty much the same. You can see the markings are pretty much the same. Again, not roll marked, engraved, and again, missing the Hartford horsey and the globe up there. Now, the markings on this are a little bit more like the Colt markings. Again, it says Palmetto State Armory, West Columbia, South Carolina. But this USA marking with the lines on either side is very Colt-like. So that's kind of cool. I like both of these markings. Of course, this one, because it's an M4A1, this one's marked safe, semi, and auto. But again, this is purely cosmetic. This is not an actual M4A1 lower. It's not going to fire full auto. It's not intended to. And frankly, I wouldn't want the hassle of it if it was. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about these. Again, they're really nicely manufactured. I don't see any flaws in the finishing. Everything is machined perfectly, as you would expect with modern CNC manufacturing techniques. They're a little bit shiny. Here's an older Bushmaster A2 upper. You can see this is sort of a dull black. And that's only because these have a thin film of preservative oil that they were shipped with. I'm pretty sure that when you wash these and get them nice and clean before assembly, they're going to end up being sort of matte black like this. And in fact, this A2, this old Wyndham manufactured Bushmaster A2 is probably going to go with the M4 lower eventually. I'm probably going to get a 1-in-7 M4 profile barrel to go in here. And that's probably how this carbine's going to go together eventually. Not really sure about that. The fit is nice and tight. There's a little bit of lateral wiggle. Of course, I won't know how it fits up and down until I have the pins in there. But yeah, I think they look really good. I'm glad I bought them. I know some people think that these, government property marks are kind of silly, but again, I'm kind of a kid at heart, and I sort of dig that. It may not be your taste, but I think it's kind of cool. So I am going to go ahead and start building one of these. I think I'll probably do the M4 first. I'll probably leave the M4A1 for later. I have more M4 correct parts, Car 15 style buttstock with a 4-position buffer tube. So I'll probably do this one up first, but I am not going to do that on camera. Again, YouTube absolutely forbids you teaching anybody how to put a gun together correctly. So I guess they want people to put guns together incorrectly so that they'll be more unsafe. But so I'm going to go ahead and put one of these together. Probably the next time you see either of these lowers, it'll be a fully assembled carbine or maybe a pistol. Who knows? Maybe an SBR if I get really fancy and I want to go ahead and paper one of these. I don't know. But next time you see it, it'll be at the range. So I'm going to start working on my next video. And when I post that, I hope to see each of you here then. Later, guys.